It all started 6 months ago, when a local TV channel aired a report claiming that Clint, known for his support of veterans, had allegedly embezzled funds from the war veterans charity he had founded back in the 80s. The report was dripping with sarcasm. The anchor mockingly called him the cowboy who robs heroes. There was no evidence, just insinuations and old photos of Clint on film sets. But in the age of social media, that was enough for a wave of outrage to sweep across X and local newspapers. For a man who had spent his life proud of his honor and principles, it was a blow straight to the heart. Clint filed a defamation lawsuit. He didn't hire a lawyer. He chose to represent himself. For him, this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a matter of dignity. The courtroom was modest, a worn wooden witness stand, the scent of old varnish and coffee drifting in from the hallway, where a secretary was whispering with a security guard. Sunlight filtered through dusty blinds, casting stripes of light on the floor. Behind the judge's bench sat Roy Hillman, a 62-year-old man with a sharp tongue and a reputation for belittling those who didn't match his idea of seriousness. He had already heard about the Eastwood case, and clearly wasn't impressed. "So, Mr. Eastwood," Hillman began, leaning back in his chair with a faint smirk, "you think you can just walk in here like it's another one of your westerns and impress us all? No lawyer, no preparation? You really believe your Hollywood tricks will work here?" A few chuckles echoed through the room. The audience, some local reporters, the TV channel's attorney, and about a dozen spectators, mostly retirees who came to see the show, exchanged glances. Clint didn't flinch. His hands rested on the table, fingers calmly interlaced. He slowly raised his gaze to the judge. "I'm not here for tricks, Your Honor," he replied in a hoarse but steady voice. "I'm here to defend my name and the people I represent. The facts will speak for themselves." Hillman snorted, glancing over the papers in front of him. "Facts? Did you bring us a script or evidence? Because all I see is an old actor who thinks he can play a lawyer." The channel's attorney, a young man in an expensive suit named Andrew Cox, stood and added, "Your Honor, my client asserts the report was within the bounds of free speech. Mr. Eastwood hasn't provided any documentation to refute our claims. This is just an attempt to intimidate the press with his fame." Clint turned to Cox. His expression was calm, but piercing, like Dirty Harry before the final shot. "Freedom of speech doesn't give you the right to lie about people who gave everything for this country," he said. "I brought documents, and I'm ready to show them. The question is, are you ready to listen?" Judge Hillman rolled his eyes. "Oh, we're all thrilled, Mr. Eastwood. Let's see your documents. But if this is just another dramatic scene, I'll end this show real quick." Clint pulled a stack of papers from his worn leather folder. He laid them out in front of him. Bank statements, letters from veterans, financial reports from the foundation over the past 20 years. Each document was neatly numbered, with stamps and signatures. He began to speak, slowly and clearly, explaining how the foundation raised money, how it was distributed for prosthetics, medical care, housing for veterans. His voice was low, but carried the weight of decades of experience. "Here's a $15,000 check I personally signed in 2019 for the family of a Vietnam veteran who lost both legs," he said, holding up the yellow document. "Here's a letter from him, thanking us for helping him buy a new wheelchair. And here's the 2023 report, every cent accounted for." The room fell silent. The journalists began scribbling notes. Even Cox, the channel's lawyer, furrowed his brow as he looked over his notes. But Judge Hillman wasn't backing down. "So what? You think a few sheets of paper prove your innocence? The TV channel claims you could have hidden part of the money. Where's the proof that you didn't?" Clint stood up. He moved slowly, but with confidence, the way someone does when they know the truth is on their side. "Your Honor, I'm not hiding behind lawyers or excuses. I can explain every dollar. The real question for you and for them," he nodded toward Cox, "is why you choose to believe rumors over facts. Why are you so quick to throw dirt on those who served, when you've never known what war even means?" A hush fell over the courtroom. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hum more quietly. Judge Hillman opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. Clint remained standing, his figure towering over the table like a monument to resolve. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He simply looked at the judge with calm determination. "I demand you subpoena their editor-in-chief as a witness," Clint added. "Let him explain where this story came from. If they have evidence, let's see it. If not, let them admit they lied." Hillman scowled. He clearly wasn't used to someone challenging him so calmly and logically. He tapped his pen against the desk, then muttered, "Fine, Mr. Eastwood. We'll subpoena the editor. But if this is a waste of time, you'll wish you'd hired a lawyer." Clint sat down, never breaking eye contact with the judge. "I'm not afraid of time, Your Honor. And I'm not afraid of the truth." The session ended on that note. The audience whispered as they left the courtroom. A woman in her 70s, wearing a faded denim jacket, turned to her friend and quietly said, "God, I wouldn't want to be that judge right now. That old cowboy's gonna crush him." Outside the courthouse, the air smelled of spring freshness and the exhaust fumes of cars humming down the nearby street. Clint stood on the steps, holding his folder. He knew this was only the beginning. The TV channel wouldn't back down easily, and Judge Hillman clearly held a personal grudge. But deep down, Clint felt calm. He wasn't after revenge, only justice. And he was ready to prove that even at 94, an old cowboy could win a battle, not with fists, but with the truth. The next court session was scheduled for the morning of Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Rumors of Clint Eastwood's confrontation with Judge Hillman and the television network had spread through the city like dry grass catching fire. Retirees from local coffee shops, veterans from American Legions, and even a few young bloggers with their phones in hand crowded onto the wooden benches. The air in the courtroom was thick with the scent of old wood and the faint aroma of cologne, clearly overapplied. The buzz of conversation died down as Judge Hillman entered and slammed his gavel on the table. "Silence," he barked, his voice echoing off the walls. "Today we will hear the defense witness. Mr. Eastwood, I trust you won't waste my time." Clint sat in the same spot, wearing a simple gray shirt and dark pants. His briefcase lay in front of him, like a loyal companion. He nodded at the judge, but said nothing. His silence irritated Hillman. It was evident from the way he nervously tapped his fingers on the table. The editor-in-chief of the network, Ron Turner, was called to the stand. He was about 50, lean, with balding hair and thin-framed glasses. He looked like a typical office worker, but his nervous movements betrayed the tension. Cox, the network's lawyer, began asking questions. "Mr. Turner, tell us how the report about Mr. Eastwood's fund came about." Turner cleared his throat, holding his hands before him. "We received an anonymous letter. It contained documents, copies of bank transfers, that supposedly showed money from the fund going into Mr. Eastwood's personal account. We verified the main facts and decided it was worth investigating." Clint leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He raised his hand, and the judge, sighing, allowed him to speak. "You said supposedly," Clint began, his voice low and measured. "Did you check if these documents were authentic? Did you contact the bank? Or me?" Turner hesitated. We thought we had enough to publish the story. It was an exclusive. An exclusive that ruined my reputation and insulted veterans," Clint shot back. "Show me these documents. I want to see them." Judge Hillman raised an eyebrow, but nodded at Cox. The lawyer pulled several sheets from his briefcase and handed them to the bailiff, who placed them in front of Clint. Clint picked up the papers and began flipping through them. The courtroom fell silent. Even the fan on the ceiling seemed to stop buzzing. After a minute, Clint looked up. "These are forgeries," he said calmly. Hillman snorted. "You're an expert on banking documents now, Mr. Eastwood?" "No, Your Honor. But I know my fund. Here's a transfer of $50,000, supposedly going into my account in 2022. At the time, I was in California shooting a movie. My bank account is with Wells Fargo, but this says Chase. I've never had an account with Chase. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Cox quickly stood. Your Honor, these are just Mr. Eastwood's words. We need time to verify. Verify what? Clint interrupted. You should have verified this before calling me a thief on national television. I can provide statements from Wells Fargo in 5 minutes. Can you show where these numbers came from? Turner flushed, his fingers gripping the edge of the stand. The letter came by mail. We didn't know who sent it. And you didn't think to check? Clint's voice grew firmer, though he didn't raise it. You slandered people who gave their lives for this country and didn't even ask yourselves if this was true? Judge Hillman frowned, but this time his sarcasm was gone. He turned to Turner. Can you name the source of this letter? No, Your Honor, Turner answered quietly. But we acted within journalistic ethics. Ethics. Clint stood up, his tall frame and calm confidence filling the room. You call that ethics? I've spent 60 years supporting veterans. I've seen them come home without legs, without arms, without hope. And you, sitting in your offices, decided you could spit in their faces for the sake of ratings? The room fell silent, like in a church. A woman in the back, an elderly lady with an American Legion medal on her chest, wiped away a tear. Even Cox lowered his eyes to the table. But then something unexpected happened. Turner suddenly raised his head, his voice trembling. It wasn't just a letter, he said. I got a call. The person said they had proof and asked for us to rush the report. They said it had to be loud. Clint froze. Judge Hillman leaned forward. Who called? He demanded. Turner swallowed. I don't know their name, but they said they worked for one of your competitors, Mr. Eastwood. Someone who wanted to shut down your fund. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Journalists scrambled, typing messages on their phones. Clint slowly sat back down, his face unreadable, but a spark flickered in his eyes. This was no longer just slander. This was a planned attack. But by whom? And why? Judge Hillman slammed his gavel. Enough. We will continue tomorrow. Mr. Turner, you will be under oath, and if you're lying, I'll make sure you regret it. Clint gathered his papers and left the courtroom. On the courthouse steps, a small group of veterans, men and women with faded caps and medals, waited for him. One of them, an old man with a prosthetic leg, approached Clint. We're with you, Clint, he said hoarsely. Show them we're not garbage. Clint nodded, shaking his hand. I won't stop until the truth comes to light. He climbed into his old Ford pickup truck, parked outside the courthouse. The engine hummed like an old friend, ready for battle. Clint knew that tomorrow, everything would change. Someone was behind this lie, and he was going to find out who. The next day, April 16, 2025, the courtroom in Oklahoma City was buzzing like a beehive. Word of Ron Turner's confession the previous day had spread throughout the city, and now there was not a single empty seat. Elderly veterans in hats with embroidered emblems, local farmers who had come from the suburbs, and even a few young activists with justice for Clint signs were crowded in the hall. The air smelled of sweat, coffee, and tension. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting golden stripes on the wooden floor, and the old ceiling fan hummed as if trying to calm the overall anxiety. Judge Roy Hillman entered with a grim expression. His usual sarcasm had been replaced with cold restraint. He clearly felt the case was getting out of control. Clint Eastwood sat in his place, as usual, in a simple shirt with a stack of papers in front of him. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. Today he wasn't just defending his name. He was fighting for those who stood behind him, veterans who had placed their trust in him. We'll continue the hearing, Hillman announced, tapping his gavel. Mr. Turner, yesterday you stated that you received a call from someone claiming to work for Mr. Eastwood's competitor. Please provide a name or explain what you meant. Ron Turner stood at the witness stand, his hands trembling. He glanced at the TV station's lawyer, Andrew Cox, but the lawyer merely lowered his gaze. Turner cleared his throat. I don't know his real name. He introduced himself as John. He said he worked for an organization that wanted to lure donors away from Mr. Eastwood's fund. He sent documents by mail and asked me to rush the report, promising it would make our careers. The hall murmured. Clint leaned forward, his voice low and clear. What organization? Turner swallowed. He didn't name it directly, but he mentioned something about patriotic initiatives. He said they were setting up a new fund and that your fund was hindering their ability to attract money. The whispering in the hall grew louder. Judge Hillman slammed his gavel. Silence. Mr. Eastwood, do you have anything to add? Clint slowly rose. His movements were deliberate, but each gesture radiated strength. He took another document from his briefcase, a thick report with seals and signatures. Your Honor, I conducted my own investigation, he began. After yesterday, I contacted a few people who know how charitable funds operate. Here's a report from an independent auditor I hired last year. He checked every penny in my fund. Not a single dollar was stolen. But I also asked them to dig deeper, to find out who might have a motive. He placed the report on the bailiff's desk, who passed it to the judge. Clint continued. 2 months ago, a new organization appeared in Oklahoma, Patriotic Veterans Aid. They raised $2 million in their first weeks. Nice name, right? But if you look at their reports, he nodded to the document, 80% of that money went to administrative expenses. You know what that means? Private jets, expensive offices, dinners at restaurants. And the veterans? They got a few boxes of canned beans. The hall erupted in outraged murmurs. A woman in the back, with gray hair and an American Legion badge, shouted, Shame. Hillman banged his gavel again, but this time his voice was less certain. Mr. Eastwood, are you accusing this organization of slander? I'm not accusing, Clint replied. I'm asking, why did they appear just as my fund started a campaign to build a new rehabilitation center? Why did their anonymous donor send fake documents to Mr. Turner? And why has no one checked who's behind this patriotic aid? Cox jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is speculation. Mr. Eastwood has no proof that these two matters are connected. Clint turned to him, his gaze as cold as steel. I have something better than proof. I have a witness. The room fell silent. Clint nodded to the bailiff, and he opened the door. A young woman entered, around 30 years old, in a business suit. Her name was Emily Wright, and she was a former accountant for Patriotic Veterans Aid. Under oath, she told how she was hired to optimize reports. But when she started asking questions about where the money was going, she was fired. Emily had kept copies of internal letters where the organization's head, a man named Howard Lynch, instructed to eliminate the Eastwood problem by any means necessary. I couldn't stay silent, Emily said, her voice trembling, but she held firm. I'm the daughter of a veteran. My father came back from Vietnam without a leg. Your fund, Mr. Eastwood, helped him get a prosthetic. And these people, they're just stealing from those who need it most. When Emily finished, the room was silent. Even Judge Hillman, who had maintained an air of indifference, looked stunned. He took off his glasses and rubbed his nose. Mr. Cox, he said finally, do you have a response? Cox stammered, flipping through his papers. We need time to verify these accusations. Time. Hillman raised his voice. You and your client accused a man without evidence. And now you want time? I'm dismissing this case due to lack of grounds. And I'm forwarding these documents to the district attorney for an investigation into Patriotic Veterans Aid. The room erupted in applause. Veterans stood, fists clenched in joy. Journalists rushed to their phones, typing headlines. Clint stood calmly, his face unchanged, but there was a faint glint in his eyes. He wasn't looking for glory, only truth. When the hearing was over, Hillman approached Clint by the exit. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. I was wrong about you, Mr. Eastwood. You did more than I expected. Clint nodded, his hand firmly gripping the judge's. I don't hold a grudge, Your Honor. But keep your eyes open. People like Lynch aren't done yet. On the courthouse steps, Clint was greeted by a crowd. Veterans embraced him, thanked him, cried. An old man in a wheelchair, with a Purple Heart medal on his chest, grabbed his hand. You gave us a voice, Clint. Thank you. Clint smiled, a rare, warm smile that would melt any heart. It wasn't me. It's all of you. You're the real heroes. He got into his pickup truck, the engine roared, and the vehicle slowly drove away. In the rearview mirror, he saw the crowd waving at him. The case was won, but Clint knew the fight was far from over. Howard Lynch and his organization were still out there, and the truth about their machinations was only beginning to surface. But today, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The small step taken in that room marked the beginning of great change.